Over the years, there have been plenty of stories that deal with an evil version of Superman. It's a concept that's been approached in many forms. But to do it properly, I think you have to understand what makes Clark Kent Superman in the first place. Why does he choose to save and protect lives instead of the opposite? What makes him a figure to aspire to? What makes him a good guy? The answer I've always pointed to is his upbringing. Adopted and raised by the hard-working Jonathan and Martha Kent, they instill in him a work ethic, a sense of morals, and a people who encourage Clark to be the best person he can be, to protect the rest of the world. Without the Kents, who knows who Clark would have grown up to be? If the Kents weren't the first to find Clark when his spaceship landed, or if he didn't grow up on Kent Farm, would he have still become Superman? What would Superman without the upbringing of the Kents be like? This year, we've had two major pieces of media deal with this concept: the Amazon Prime TV series The Boys, and the film Brightburn. I'll get to these a little later, but first I wanted to discuss a story that takes place during Clark's teenage years. A wonderful episode of the TV series Smallville. Now, trust me, I know Smallville wasn't always the stamp of quality, but the show's early seasons do tell some great stories about the upbringing of Clark Kent, with a great emphasis on the effect that his parents had on him. In the 12th episode of the show's first season, we meet a classmate of Clark's named Eric Summers, played by Shawn Ashmore. Yes, X-Men's Iceman played a character named Eric Summers, it's kind of amusing. After a field trip, Eric hasn't come back to the bus with the rest of the class, so Clark offers to find him, because of course he does. Clark finds and saves Eric from nearly falling off a bridge while he happened to be holding a piece of kryptonite, and they get struck by lightning. This causes Clark to lose his abilities and they transfer to Eric. We see that Eric doesn't have a great relationship with his father, who also happens to be their teacher. He often talks down to Eric and even goes to smack him in the head later in the episode before becoming aware of his new abilities. Eric and his newfound abilities stop a mugging, and suddenly Eric becomes a local celebrity, even being dubbed Superboy. Clark begins to wonder if keeping his abilities a secret from everyone, including his closest friends all this time, was even worth it.
You know, all those years of hiding, I wonder if it was worth it. Everyone's fine with Eric.
Eric's terrible relationship with his father gets worse and his mother becomes afraid of him. Compare this to Clark's relationship with his parents, who do anything to protect him. We see what the fame does to Eric and how his parents react to his newfound powers, and they immediately want to send him to a laboratory. This causes Eric to act out even more, and he beats up and embarrasses a student who belittled him earlier in the episode and also happens to date a girl that Eric is interested in. Clark, still without his abilities, tries to intervene because, as he puts it,
even though Eric has my abilities, I still think of them as my responsibility.
By the end of the episode, Clark does regain his powers from Eric during a fight. Jonathan tells Clark that his abilities don't define him, and Clark replies with this line.
That's because Eric didn't get my two strongest gifts. You and Mom.
The episode shows us the importance of Clark's upbringing and how his sense of doing the right thing still kicks in, even when he's just a regular guy. With his powers gone, the weight of the world is lifted off of Clark's shoulders. We see him do things he wouldn't normally do, like play basketball with other students, or be able to approach the girl he's in love with, Lana Lang, who he normally wouldn't be able to because she wears a kryptonite necklace. Life would be so much easier if he just let Eric keep his abilities. He would get to live a normal life and not have to constantly lie to his friends, but he can't help it. The episode is a wonderful crash course on why Clark Kent is who he is, and why he grows up to become Superman, and not, say, Homelander from The Boys. The first season of The Boys was only released a month or so ago, so I won't talk too much in the way of spoilers, and I'm yet to dive into the comics, so I'll just be referring to the show for now. But Homelander is very clearly intended to be the Superman of this universe, with a little Captain America sprinkled in there as well. We learn that he was actually raised in a lab without actual parents, and this ends up being the result.
I'm the Homelander, and I can do whatever the fuck I want.
He doesn't really care about saving lives, he doesn't understand regular people. He's a living weapon and he's never held accountable for his actions, because he's not only the most powerful guy around, but he's also a famous celebrity, with no secret identity or no true attachments in his life. The Boys is a great example of how to deconstruct Superman. They clearly get what makes Superman tick, so they do the opposite with him. Unfortunately, the film Brightburn didn't quite nail it. This film was presented as, essentially, what if a kid had Superman's powers, but the kid was also just a little off. The teaser trailer was pretty great, playing off the teaser for Man of Steel, and while the film itself has some effectiveness as a horror film, It ultimately falls kinda flat in its presented concept because we don't know why this kid is creepy to begin with. There's the vague idea that he's maybe getting influenced by the spaceship that he landed in, that his parents had hid in their barn. His parents, who appear to be good people with morals, until they don't, they constantly say that Brandon, I think that's meant to be a reference. They say that Brandon has changed recently, but we don't get to know him prior to this change. One of the weird things we learn about him is that in his hidden porn collection, there are creepy images of the insides of people's bodies. We don't know what he does with these images, or if he's only just started looking at them, or if he's had them for a while. As far as we know, Brandon is learning about his abilities at the same time as the audience. If the idea was just, what if a creepy kid was Superman, unfortunately it's completely lacking of the substance that made this story work. It's a shame, because I thought the film had a lot of potential. People often talk about the roller coaster of quality that Batman has undergone in film, but people don't often talk about how mishandled Superman has been over and over again. There's certainly that part of me that really would have liked to have seen Tim Burton's Superman Lives, especially after what was uncovered in the Death of Superman Lives documentary, but that project was filled with tons of people who didn't know anything about Superman or didn't even like him very much. I give a lot of credit to Superman Returns in trying to make a Superman film about Superman. While it's quite heavy-handed in being Bryan Singer's love letter to the 1978 film, I do welcome a film that doesn't shy away from embracing a more classic take on the character. Compare that to Man of Steel, where even putting aside the grim and dull colour palette of the film and the muted colours of Superman's costume, we've got a film where the lead character doesn't really care or notice that he's destroying a city while having a punching contest with General Zod. Only when it's made extremely obvious that Zod is going to murder a family right before the eyes of the audience does Superman decide to snap Zod's neck to end their fight that just leveled his city. And even though Superman is clearly distraught after their fight had to come to this conclusion, he's back to smiling and joking with the military the immediately following scene.
I just think he's kinda hot.
Superman deciding to snap Zod's neck is never even mentioned again in the other two films. Even though there's some silliness and odd choices made throughout the Superman films, I'll take chipper and optimistic Superman any day of the week over
I'll take you in without breaking you.
No one stays good in this world. Superman was never real. Just the dream of a farmer from Kansas.
It might seem redundant at this point to still complain about how Superman was handled by Zack Snyder and co., but it really says something when, in what was intended to be the biggest cinema event that the character had ever been involved in, Superman, the guy that stands for truth and justice, the very symbol of hope and optimism, is reduced to
No one stays good in this world.
And we haven't even mentioned Justice League.
Well, I knew you didn't bring me back because you like me.
I don't... not...
Remember how Danny Elfman thought it was a good idea to scrap Hans Zimmer's score from the previous two films and incorporate the classic John Williams Superman theme instead? You know, the music cue that feels so uplifting and heroic, where you can basically hear the instruments sing Superman's name. Well, Elfman decided to incorporate it at the moment that Psycho Superman is trying to kill the Flash. To be honest, that's kind of the least of that film's problems, but it sure bothered me. I think it's pretty clear that I care about Superman. You often hear the statement that Superman is difficult to relate to as a character because he's too powerful. I've always found that argument to be kinda dumb. When done correctly, he's the most relatable character. He comes from the working class. Every day he strives to be the best person he can be. He lives amongst everyday people as mild-mannered reporter Clark Kent as an opportunity to be normal.
Must be tough being Clark Kent, isn't it?
No, I really like it sometimes. Even though I do make a fool of myself.
He likes people. He believes in people, the same way people believe in Superman. If he doesn't spend time as regular old Clark Kent, he'd just be flying around like this all the time. He saves people because he feels it's his duty, his responsibility.
You wrote that the world doesn't need a savior. But every day I hear people crying for one.
A person with as much power as Superman could do whatever he wants to. Sure, Superman could kill every criminal he comes into contact with, but then what sort of message would that send? What sort of example would that set? People might find it cool or badass to see Superman get so angry that he punches through the chest of the Joker, but that's not who Superman is. Superman is a Boy Scout. He does take the moral high ground. He does the right thing based on the principles that were instilled in him by his parents. And that's what I believe makes Clark Kent Superman. Thanks for watching, everybody. I got a lot of positive reactions to the Venom video, and I do want to make more videos like this. I know it's been a couple of months since the Venom video, but I do have a lot of stuff planned. Please bear with me. It's been a whole 10 years since I first started this channel. The first video I ever uploaded was early September in 2009, and here we are. So I'm doing some different stuff, and I hope you'll keep joining me for the stuff that I've got coming. So thanks for watching, guys.